Okay, but what's passive voice again? Okay, we use the verb usually.
Recording stopped.
Past participle. Okay, and then what else? Actually, depending on the sentence, right? So passive voice, there is present simple passive. There's there's past simple passive. So every type of sentence has its own passive form. But the question is, what's passive voice? When do we usually use it? In general, when do we use passive? Yes.
Recording in progress.
Can anyone tell me? Let's have homie. Homie, passive voice. Okay, so normally if it's in task 1 writing, so if we do not want to include the doer of the action, then we make use of passive voice. So usually we use passive voice when describing maps or processes because we do not know who the doers of the actions are. And then if it says, when we say process, especially process production, so someone is making something, am I right? Or someone does changes, or someone does the steps to produce something. And since this is report writing, we cannot assume who the doers of the actions are. So that is why we use passive voice. Just remember, for you to be safe, if you are going to describe data-driven charts, so when you say data-driven charts, these charts have figures. Okay, so example, bar chart, pie chart, tables, line graphs, those are examples of data-driven charts. Data-driven charts. So typically, if we are going to describe them, we don't use passive voice. We just use the regular active voice. Okay? We can still use passive voice, but just for you to be safe, for you to not get confused. So just stick to active voice. Okay? Next one. Let's have one. Okay, the next one. Okay, all right. So this is one of the basic requirements in task 1 writing. So you have to make sure that you pick at least 150 words. So of course, even if your vocabulary is good, but you did not hit 150 words, expect to have deductions. This is just the instruction, or this is one of the most important instructions. So same as with reading and listening. So let's say your answer is correct, but you do not follow instructions. Instead of writing words, you wrote, let's say you wrote initials. Or instead of writing letters, you wrote the words. So of course your answer will not be correct, just because you did not follow instructions. So make sure that you follow instructions, including the word count requirement. Okay, things that you have to avoid. Let's have Hi. Can you read the first one? Hi. Okay, all right. Now, in the event that you will be receiving a data-driven chart that has lots of figures and then they show changes. So let's say that your entire chart would show a 10-year period. So 10-year period. So in your chart, there are 10 years. So when you say do not describe the trends in details, so what I mean to say is that you don't have to write or you don't have to describe what the figure does or what happens to the figure every year. Okay? So the instruction tells you to summarize the main features of the chart. So only describe big changes. You don't have to take note of every change. Alright? So if there is a period of instability, so quote what years are those from and to. This is the change, or this is the type of change. You can group them together. Do not describe the changes one by one. Okay? Next one, what's that number? Number 2.
Give your personal comments on reason for later change, such as later has dropped because of the reason.
Okay, so there you go. So since you're writing a report, this is not the same as task 2 writing. Task 2 writing, there are no wrong or right answers. So you can express whatever opinions you have as long as they are directly relevant to the topic. But in the case of task 1 writing, since this is a report, you do not really give any comment. You only base your report on what you actually see from the data given. Okay? So if a figure dropped significantly, please do not put comments. What caused the figures to drop? Do not. Okay? So it's actually none of our business. If it drops, then it drops. If it increases, then it increases. Reasons, even if you're knowledgeable about the topic, you're not supposed to apply your prior knowledge. Alright? So you just have to describe what exactly you see. You understand? So example, let's say that your data would be oil prices. And then let's say that you happen to study oil prices because it's one of your subjects at school, or you're interested in this topic and you keep on reading information about this topic. Again, anything that you know about this topic in particular, do not apply this when describing your chart. And do not give any reasons. So this is an example. So the data dropped because of the crisis. This is an opinion. So do not, never put an opinion in task 1 writing. Do not use the words such as important. Alright, so many people do this, do that. This category is important to people because do not. Okay? So just to be safe, avoid adjectives that would describe feelings. Alright, so it's good, it's bad, it got better. Do not use those types of language. Okay? Next one. Alright, let's have Liên. Can you read the third one, please? Quoting. Okay, alright. So again, in task 2 writing, whatever your answers are, it's fine, as long as your answers are relevant to the topic. But in task 1 writing needs accuracy. So whatever figures you report, they have to also be the exact figures, or as close as much as you can to what you see from your chart. The closer your description in your chart, or the closer of you describing, or the closer the description, the higher your score. Okay? So with that, make sure that you do not have any mistakes in coding the figures. So example, 49%, is it the same as 50%? Yes or no? You. Are they the same? 49% and 50%? No, right? Okay, so this is why if a category's figure is at 49%, you do not report it as 50%. Even if 50% is just 1% higher. So what you can do, you can use language of approximation. So instead of saying this figure as 50%, you can add the word almost 50%, or about 50%. So we can use these types of languages to describe 49%. Okay? Questions? Clear? All right. So when voting for the highest figure, so make sure that whatever the category with the highest figure is, quote that figure as is. Do not make mistakes. Do not interchange. So example, let's say that category A had the highest figure the entire period. However, you reported it as category B had the highest figure. So that's already inaccuracy. So there will be deductions. Your overall description will be affected. Okay? All right. So for you to be able to make sure that you are writing correctly, or you're writing the specifics accurately, so you have to plan first. Okay? So remember, you're only given 60 minutes your task writing or your writing examination would only be 60 minutes. And you have to perform 2 tasks. So ideally, we would want to put more time, we would want to invest more time in task 2, because this is 2/3 of your credit score. So if you are to do the math, technically speaking, we would like to use 40 minutes out of the 60 minutes to finish task 2, and then 20 minutes for task 1, realistically speaking. Okay? So if you're not going to plan, 20 minutes may not be enough for you to finish task 1. Alright? So when you plan, spend 5 minutes planning. Alright, so let's say 10 to 15 minutes writing, and then another 5 minutes evaluating your work. Right, so this is the ideal timing for writing task 1. So of course, if you go beyond 20 minutes, it's fine. So let's say if you're not able to finish task 1 writing, so you may go up to 25 or 30 minutes, but make sure that you don't compromise task 2. Alright? Finish task 2 first. If you think that you cannot finish the 2 tasks in time, finish task 2 first by all means, because it's 2/3 of your grad score. Alright? But of course, for you to keep that from happening, plan. Not only in task 1, but also in task 2. Now, considering planning in task 1, so these are some of the things that you need to ask yourself. Alright, so the first one, let's have naman, data presented. Okay, so since we're talking about bar charts, a bar chart is actually made up of axes. Okay, alright. So for everyone's information, so this is an example of a bar chart. Alright, so this is one of the most common questions in task 1 writing. Now going back to axes. So this is what we call x-axis. This is what we call y-axis. For you to be able to describe the data in your chart, you have to learn how to read a chart. Okay? So typically, your x-axis, if the bar chart is or shows a period of time, or let's say if your bar chart is dynamic chart, or when you say dynamic chart, it shows changes. So usually in the x-axis, you would see the years. Okay, so such as this one. This is what we call dynamic charts. So when you say dynamic charts again, they show changes over a period. Okay, so what years are involved in this chart? What years do you see? Let's have mine. What years are there in this chart? What years are there? Years 2006 to 2010. So if you happen to see this type of chart, it basically means that there are changes going on. Alright? So usually, if it's data-driven chart, if it's dynamic chart, you see the years here. For y-axis, you normally see the units of measurement. So what are the units of measurements used in the categories in the charts? So what's the unit of measurement here? Let's have come to. What do you see in your y-axis? What are these? There. Money, right? $120,000. So there. So we need to say, typically in y-axis of a bar chart, so you happen to see the units of measurement. Okay? All right. Now, when describing or when reading a category, so what you need to do is to look at the time period and then also where the bar is. For example, the bars that you see in green, what category do they represent? Let's have Talan. The bars that you see in green, what category do they represent? The ones in green, what categories are they? Look at your laptop. At your screen? What category are they? All the bars in green. This one. What category do they represent? Are you opening your laptop? Look at your laptop. What category are the bars in green? What category do they represent? They represent figures for? Yes, someone? What do they represent? What category? Look at your key. Look at the legend. Green represents romance. Okay, so there you go. So this is one of the categories that you need to report. So how do you report? Of course, you report the figures according to years. For example, in 2006, what is the figure for romance? Or what was the figure for romance? Let's have, what was the figure for romance in 2006? 2006, romance. Okay, so slightly over $80,000. This is in dollars. If you're going to report this as 80,000, then you will have deductions. 80,000 and $80,000, they're not the same. Okay, so when you say $80,000, you're pertaining to an amount of money. So it says here gross earnings, how much they earn. Okay, so there. So that's how you read bar charts. So try to check what's the name of the category according to the legend, what the bar represents, and then what year, if there are years, and what's the time or what is the exact figure. Questions? No questions? All right. So next one, let's have one, the second bullet. What? Okay, so there you go. So you don't have to name the groups. Also, for everyone's information, we do not report all the numbers or the figures that we see, but we have to name all of the categories in our report. Okay, so the names of the categories involved in the chart has to appear in our report. Okay, so we may not be able, or we may not have to mention all of the figures involving each category, but we have to still name the categories. Okay, you have to know what's being described, what's being compared and contrasted. Okay, next one, number 3. Let's have Hungry. Okay, this is very important. Since you're going to write a report, so that means that you will have to write sentences. And when you write sentences, there is always a verb. So try to check what are the time period, or what are the time periods involved, if they're in the past, if they're in the future. All right, or do you think that the current year is also included in the report? You have to be consistent in your verb tenses. Next one, let's have 2. The other 2. What are? Okay, all right. So again, do not only write numbers, try to check what is their unit of measurement. So if you happen to see that the figures are in dollars, so you have to report them in dollars. If they are in kilometers, then you will have to report them in kilometers. All right? Do not just report figures. You also have to apply what is the unit of measurement when reporting them. Okay, next one. Let's have, or we have online. Okay, let's have bin 0624. Are you there?
Yes.
Okay, can you read this part, please?
Can I make any comparison? There any expression?
Exception.
Exception.
Okay, all right. Can I make any comparison Yes, you have to. Alright? So most of the time, if you're going to describe data-driven charts, you will have to compare and contrast. So name similarities, name differences, especially if they are main features. If they're obvious, you have to name them. Okay? You do not only mention the changes, you also need to compare and contrast categories within a body paragraph. What about exceptions? What do you mean by exceptions? Let's have Fumi. What are exceptions? Exceptions. When you hear the word exceptions, what does that mean? Something that does not follow the trend. Different. So let's say that you have 5 categories. All of them went up except one category that followed, let's say, a decreasing trend. So this trend, this category is an example of an exception. Okay? Exceptions are actually main features as well. Okay, all right, so as mentioned, so this is how a bar chart looks like. How you describe a bar chart is also pretty similar as to how you describe other data-driven charts. So if you're going to describe a line chart, so it's also pretty much the same as to how you describe a bar chart. Especially bar charts or that shows time periods, or that changes, or the figures change over time. Okay? You don't have to learn new vocabulary. If you're already well versed in the different kinds of vocabulary that are involved to describe data-driven charts, then you don't really have to learn more. Okay? So what the type of vocabulary that you use in other charts, you can use them to also describe bar charts. So that's a good thing about task 1 writing. So you can memorize common words that are used to describe charts, and you can apply them at any given type of chart. Of course, except it's process or that description. All right? So, regardless of whatever chart you are given, you will have to follow this structure when writing a report. Again, for the new ones, if you can, take a photo or take notes. So, technically speaking, introduction and overview for most charts are short. This is why I mentioned earlier, you can put them in 1 paragraph. But you have to have at least 2 body paragraphs. This will address cohesion and coherence. If you're going to group the data according to, let's say, similarities or differences, so we need to say every bar chart or every paragraph has its theme, so it's easier to describe. So your examiner can easily imagine what the chart looks like, right? Okay, so let's do another bar chart. Let me have someone read the introduction to this bar chart. Let's have someone from online. Can we have... Okay, let's have Lan 0726. Can you read this, just this part here?
The chart below shows how frequently people in the USA eat in fast food restaurants between 2003 and 2013.
Okay, all right. So for everyone's information, technically speaking, this is an introduction to this chart that you see. Okay? This is actually an introduction. It's just that in writing, we don't want to copy. So that is why we do not copy this and use it as our own introduction. We have to change. Also, it is important that you read the introduction so that you will know how to interpret your chart. So if you do not write the introduction, you may not be able to understand what's in the chart. Okay? So, according to the introduction, what is the chart about? Let's have another hand. According to the introduction, what is this chart about? What does it describe?
The percentage of people need to test procedure.
Okay, so the proportion of people eating fast food according to according to so those are the proportions of people eating. But what type of proportions? So they ate fast food, or they went to fast food restaurants at a given time period. But what does each category represent? This one. What are these? How often? Okay, according to the frequency of their visits. Okay, so we need to say these are the proportions of people who went to fast food restaurants every day. So there. Okay, so that is why it is important to read the introduction so that you will know how to interpret your chart. All right. Now, what is the unit of measurement? How are the figures presented in the chart? Let's have high. How are the figures presented in the chart? What is the unit of measurement? Obviously, it's in. Look at your chart. It's there. How are the figures presented? Are they in dollars? Are they in kilometers? They're in percentage, meters, percent. So that's a unit of measurement. Okay? So we do not just write 30. You have to write 30%. So this is not just 5. You have to write 5% when you report the figures. Okay? All right. How many groupings are there? How many groups do you see? Let's have this one with the online. Can I have, let's see right here. We only have here online. Okay, let's just have, yeah. How many groupings do you see? There are? Okay, can you name them? Uh-huh. Very good. Okay, so these are the groups that you have to compare and contrast in your report. Okay, so next step. So remember that we have to have at least 2 body paragraphs. So once we know what are the data given, or once we understand what the chart is, and what are the categories, the time period, so this is the time period, and what or how the figures are presented. So the next thing that we need to do is to decide how to group them into 2 parts. So considering that there are 3 groups and then 2 body paragraphs, you have to make a decision on what would be the most logical way of dividing the chart into 2 groups. Okay, so I will give you time. I'll give you 1 minute. Look at the chart. Let me know what would be the most logical way to divide the chart into 2 parts. Remember, there has to be a reason why you divided it as such. So find the most logical reason on how to divide these categories into 2 parts. Again, what do you think is the most reasonable or most logical reason to divide, most logical way to divide the chart into 2 parts? Okay, so who wants to try? Let's have you. You. divide them. We have to be quick, we have to be fast. Something that we can easily notice. We use that information to divide the chart, or to consider how to divide the chart. Similarities. Normally, we divide the chart according to similarities. So groupings or categories that are similar in feature, we put them in one body paragraph. The rest in the second body paragraph. What do you think, you? Three higher. Okay, take note. These have similar figures, right? They also have similar figures, and they have also very similar figures. So in this case, how do we divide the chart into two parts? Yes? So body paragraph 1, we can consider putting these two categories together. Alright? Body paragraph 2, the rest of the categories. We cannot really report much on these categories because they're almost exactly the same. So if you're going to put them in one category or in one body paragraph only, so chances are you might only report the figures in 1 to 2 sentences. So that would be too short. So that is why we put these 4 together and then this 2 in one body paragraph. You understand? Questions? So there. Again, when you make a decision in dividing the chart into 2, do it quickly. Do not contemplate much. Remember, you only have 5 minutes, the most, the maximum, to analyze your chart. So after 5 minutes, you have to start writing. Okay? So we can easily see that since these are the 2 highest, so put them in one body paragraph. The rest in the second body paragraph. Questions? Clear? Do we have questions? Okay. What verb tense are we going to use? What tense of the verb? Let's have Toby. What verb tense are we going to use? Past tense. Okay. So considering that we have 2003, 2013, we can actually just use past simple. So past simple active. Or if you would like to talk about changes, we can also use past simple ways. Past perfect. All right. Questions? No questions? Okay. All right, grammar. So for those of you, please take note of the following grammar, where you cannot have the same vocabs when describing your chart. All right. So if you're going to write figures, if you're going to report figures, you can use the phrases accounted for, comprised of, and then also instead of always saying the number of, so we can also say the figure for. So just remember, if you're going to say number of, our category should be countable nouns, something that can be counted. But if our categories are uncountable nouns, so we say amount. So these are examples of non-counts. So if they happen to be, or if your categories happen to be of the same kind, please do not say number. For instance, let's say that your categories are people. All right, so how many people? So you have to say the number of people. We don't say the amount of people. Am I right? Okay, questions? All right, so introduction. For those who are not familiar on how to write an introduction, all you just have to do is to paraphrase. So how do we paraphrase? We can use synonyms. So synonyms are words with the same meaning or with similar meanings. For example, the word shows. So let's say that your original introduction uses the word shows, so we do not copy this. So we change it into a different one. For example, the word illustrates, gives information about, depicts. Alright? So if you happen to see these words, chart, for example, line chart, bar chart, do not change it anymore. So that's the specific name of the chart. So you can just copy, that's something that needs to be copied, for example, proper names or names of charts. But if you do not see the name of the chart in the introduction, that is the time that you name the chart. Okay? So let's say that this is the original introduction. Okay, so we can change the, or some of these words using synonyms, we can also change them into, let's say, a different form. For example, let's say, how frequently. How can we change the phrase, how frequently? Yes? Okay, so there. So instead of using the word frequently, we can change the word frequently into often. So there you go. What else? So how frequently? Frequently is an adverb. So we can use it as a noun. What is the noun form for frequently? What's that noun? How frequently can we change this into noun form? Yes. Okay, so the frequency there. Okay, the frequency of people ate. Can you think of a word that has the same meaning with the word ate? Let's have it. The word ate. Think of a word that has the same meaning with the word ate. Hello? Okay, cut off. A word that has the same meaning with the word ate or eat. Consume. There. Consume or consume. We can also make this into a noun, consumption. Okay, but just remember, the moment you change these words into, let's say, into a different word, you have to also know, you have to consider how to use the word. Okay, for example, the frequency is a noun, so this phrase is a noun, then you have to use it as a noun. Okay, so there. Chart. You have to name what chart it is. So you have to name it as bar chart. You add the word bar. Okay? We want to be as descriptive as we can because that is our task. You have to describe what you exactly see. So starting from the introduction, you name what type of chart is given. Okay? Between 2003 and 2013, how do we change this? Between and, what's that time? Between and, between 2003 and 2013. How do we change this? Okay, so we use the prepositions from 2003, and then what's next? To 2013. So there. So all you have to do is to combine. Okay, can everyone write their own introduction? So I need you to send it here. Let's write your introduction in 1 minute. So I will be calling, or I will be checking your work by 8:59. Again, write your own introduction. Your introduction, you can start with the word the name of the chart, change the verb, and then paraphrase the rest. Consider grammar, okay? Consider vocabulary. Your introduction has to have the same meaning with the original introduction. Okay. So far, I only have two. Let me check. You don't have to send it to everyone, guys. You can send it to me. So just remember, when you write a sentence, you always have to end it with a full stop, okay? Full stop. Here. So the bar chart illustrates how often individuals in the USA consume at. What do we consume? We consume food, right? So let me take this out. Consume fast food. Okay. At restaurants. From 2013 to 2003 to 2013. Okay, so this is fine. Next one. The bar chart illustrates how often individuals in the USA consume. I'm sorry. Okay, so the bar chart gives information about the frequency of junk food consumption of residents. When you say junk food doesn't have to be fast food, right? So the type of junk food is specified. So fast food. So not only fast food are not only fast food are junk food. So junk food could also be canned goods. They could also be chips. So if it's specified, then you just have to keep it as such. Okay. So frequency of fast food consumption of residents in the USA from 2003 to 2000. Okay. You can say at restaurants. Or fast food at restaurants. There. So by residents in the U.S. from 2003 to 2013. Next one. Did not mention what the chart is. Remember, name the chart. Bar chart. The rate of people eating or who ate. Fast food. Who ate at fast food restaurants in the USA from 2003 to 2013. Last one. Let's check. Okay, so this one. Again, when you write a sentence, always start with a capital letter. What chart? Bar chart. Mention the chart. Do not just say the chart. So it could be a line chart, it could be a pie chart. What chart do you see? A bar chart. So mention bar chart. Also, do not forget, do not use the word below. Okay? After your description, your examiner will not see the chart below your description. That is why do not write the word below. Okay? Number of fast food consumption. So these are not numbers, these are percentages, right? So, proportion of people. Okay, so who consumed fast food, or the frequency of people who consume fast food Or you can even say Google ate, or you can change eating fast food in restaurants in the US, in the USA from 2013 to 2003 to 2013. Okay. Questions? Do we have any questions? All right. So an example. Again, name the chart, the bar chart. So put bar here. How often, how frequently people in the US went to fast food establishment, fast food restaurants, fast food establishment, and then from to. Questions? Do we have any questions? Introduction is actually the easiest part of your report. So do not spend too much time in writing an introduction. All right? Okay, next one for overview. So when we write an overview, we can start with the word overall. Okay? Or we can also consider using these phrases. As can be seen, as is seen, it can clearly be seen. Alright, and then overall. So you just have to pick, and then after that, name the main features. Alright? So this is an example of an overview. Let me have someone read this. Let's call, hi, can you read the overview? Accounted for. Everyday. Well, okay, so there you go, as simple as this. So if you are to look at the chart again, this is something that you can easily notice. So the categories with the higher figures and the categories with the lowest percentages. You just name the categories, okay? Do not mention the figure. Do not also mention why. So only, let's say, people who went every day had the lowest percentages because they knew that fast food is unhealthy. Do not make use of that comment. Okay? So if this is the group with the lowest figures, just report it as such. Never give any comment. Never give any reasons. Understood? Questions? Okay. All right. So I'm going to give you another chart. I need you to write an overview, okay? Let me have, so let's have this one. So let's have this. Okay, so what I need you to do is to write an overview. Let's say that this is your chart. Again, write an overview. Send your overview here. can also mention the trend, similarities and differences. So it's 9:10. So I will start posting by 9:12. Yes, question? Are you done? Okay. You trying to- Again, overview, okay, not introduction. And make sure that you are writing your own overview. Do not use AI. Do not copy the introduction that you see online. Okay, so let's start posting. So as can be seen, take this out. Portugal allocated the highest proportion of government spending to roads and transport at the beginning of the period. Whereas the UK consistently spent the least. While spending in Portugal generally declined over time, the figure for the USA increased steadily. Actually not steady, there was a point that it dropped. By contrast, Italy and the UK experienced only minor fluctuations. Take this one. Alright, so be careful when it comes to description. It has to be the same as to what you exactly see from your chart. Okay, next one. Overall, it can be seen that Italy or Italia and Portugal double than UK and USA. Double is a bit more specific. We can use that type of language in body paragraph. So you can just mention that figures for Italy and Portugal is clearly much higher, right? Or the expenditure for the first two countries were much higher than the latter, UK and US. And then we can also mention the trends. So all countries experienced fluctuations over the given period except Portugal, wherein its figure steadily declined over the years. What else? What else? And then also, again, I cannot, please make sure that you always capitalize the first letter of your sentence. This will be taken against your grammar score. And then end it with a full stop. It is obvious that Italia is the name of the country, so capitalize. Portugal and UK declined. If you notice, there were actually minor fluctuations, not just decline, right? So fluctuated figures for Italy, Portugal. Okay. Let's share in this fourth country. And then also, this is for 1990 and 2005. Make sure that your verb tenses also reflect the time period. Do not use present simple. So we only use present simple in the introduction, the first verb in the introduction. But the rest, make sure that you follow the time period.